Story 1. I found my missing brother on a forum for the dead. Hey, you thrill seekers out there. Welcome back to the channel, where the dark gets a little darker every time you drop by. Tonight, we're digging into something that'll stick with you, something that'll make you wonder what's lurking just beyond the screen. Picture losing someone you'd fight the world for, only to find them reaching out from a place that shouldn't exist. That's what we're unraveling tonight. So, settle in, keep the lights low, and let's walk into the shadows together. 2 years back, my brother Ethan went missing. It was a sharp October morning in Boise, Idaho, the kind where the air's got a chill that snaps you awake. He popped out to grab coffee, nothing big, just his usual black drip from the corner store. He never made it home, no weird charges on his debit card, no late-night calls, no signs of a struggle in the driveway. Just gone, like the earth swallowed him whole. The Boise cops poked around, threw out words like abduction, but with no leads, they gave up. My family broke apart after that. Mom quit cooking. Dad quit talking. Me, I quit feeling much of anything, just drifting through days I barely remember. One night I was hunched over my laptop, the glow stinging my eyes as I scrolled through forums about lost people. You've seen them. Threads full of wild guesses and broken hopes. I'd been at it too long, chasing nothing, when I slipped into a murky corner of the internet. A thread jumped out. Messages from beyond, connecting with the lost. It was tucked deep in some forgotten site, packed with folks claiming they'd heard from the dead. Sounded crazy, but I was running on fumes, grief and no sleep, so I kept going. A post stopped me dead. Some user, Fading Echo, wrote, "Sometimes the missing don't even know they're gone. Sometimes they're right here, looking for home." Someone asked, "How do you know?" Fading Echo replied, "Because I'm one of them." My pulse kicked up. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe I was losing it. But I made an account and shot them a message. "If you're really missing, prove it. Tell me something only you'd know." The answer came quick, too quick. "Want me to prove it? How about when he broke Ethan's nose over a stupid Mario Kart fight? Or how he forgave you before you could forgive yourself?" My stomach flipped. That fight. We were kids, 12, wrestling over a controller. I'd swung too hard, caught him square in the face. Blood everywhere, but he just grinned later, said it was nothing. Nobody else knew that story, not a soul. I typed, shaky, "Who are you?" Their reply was ice cold. "I think you know." I sat there in my Boise room, the wind rattling the windows, staring at those words. Ethan. Could it be? I didn't sleep that night, just kept refreshing, waiting for more. The next night I messaged again, and Fading Echo answered. He started talking about where he was, a place like ours, but twisted. A gray sky that never changed, streets empty as tombs, air so thick it weighed you down. He didn't know how he got there, just that he woke up one day and couldn't get out. It sounded like a bad dream, but the way he wrote, it was Ethan's voice, his way of stringing words together. We talked every night after that. He'd drop little things, stuff only he'd know, like how we called our old dog Sir Barks-a-Lot, or that time he taped my awful middle school dance moves to hold over me forever. It was him. I could feel it. But then, one night, he got weird. "They're watching me now," he typed. "They don't like me talking to you." I asked who, but he dodged. "The shadows. The ones who keep us here. They hate noise." That was the last I heard for weeks. I'd checked that forum like a junkie. But Fading Echo was gone, and I started thinking I'd dreamed it all up. Then, one night, a new message popped up. "Do you want to see me?" There was a link, a live video feed. My gut screamed no, but my hand clicked anyway. The screen flickered, and there was a street, dim and warped, like our old Boise block, but wrong. Houses sagging, edges blurring. A figure moved toward the camera, slow, stiff. It was Ethan, same messy hair, same lanky build, but his eyes were too big, his walk jerky, like something pulled him along. He stopped, grinned, a grin that wasn't his, too tight, too strange. In the chat, he typed, "It's me. Told you I was here." My heart stopped and I couldn't look away. That live video hit me like a gut punch. There was Ethan standing on a warped version of our old Boise street, houses bending like they were melting into the ground. His eyes were too wide, locked on the camera, and that smile, it wasn't his, not the easy grin I grew up with. It was forced, stretched, like something else was wearing his face. My hands froze over the keyboard, my little Boise bedroom feeling too small, the walls pressing in. In the live chat, he typed, "It's me. Told you I was here." I wanted to scream, to reach through the screen and yank him back, but all I could do was stare. Then the feed shook, hard like someone kicked the camera. Behind Ethan, the shadows started moving. Not just shifting with the light, but moving, twisting, stretching into shapes that didn't make sense. Tall, jagged things, edges sharp as broken glass, clawing toward him. My breath caught and his fingers flew over the chat. "They're coming. You have to help me find the door." Before I could type back, the screen went black, the connection dead. I sat there, heart slamming, the silence in my room louder than ever. I couldn't shake it, those words, that plea. Find the door. He'd mentioned it before in our late-night forum talks, this idea of a way out of that gray hell. I pulled up every message Fading Echo Ethan had sent, scrolling through the haze of the last few weeks. My eyes burned, but I kept going, piecing it together. One line stuck out, buried in a ramble about his empty world. "It's like that cabin we used to mess around in, out by Eagle. Eagle's just outside Boise, a sleepy spot with woods that swallow you whole. We had a place there as kids, an old shack, half-rotted, our secret hideout. He'd loved it, said it felt like a fortress. Was that the door? I didn't think twice. I grabbed my keys, the clock ticking past midnight, and drove out of Boise toward Eagle. The roads were dark, trees looming like they were leaning in to listen. My headlights barely cut through the night, but I found it. The cabin, sagging under years of neglect, vines choking the walls. Inside, it smelled like damp earth and old wood, the floor creaking under my boots. I poked around, heart thudding, until I saw it. A trapdoor under a threadbare rug, half hidden by dust. I pried it open, the hinges groaning, and stared down into a black tunnel stretching out of sight. The air down there was cold, heavy, like it didn't want me breathing it. I climbed down the rickety ladder, my phone's flashlight shaking in my hand. The tunnel went on forever, walls slick with damp, the silence so thick it buzzed in my ears. At the end, I found it. An iron door, rusted and cold, carved with weird, jagged lines that didn't look random. My fingers brushed it and my phone buzzed in my pocket. I yanked it out, hands trembling, and saw a new message from Fading Echo. "They know you're here. Don't let them in." I froze, staring at the screen. Before I could reply, something moved. Shadows seeping through the tunnel walls like ink, slow and alive. They crawled toward me, thick, tar-like, reaching with fingers that weren't there. Panic hit, and I shoved the door hard. It gave with a scream of metal, and I stumbled through. Everything flipped. 1 second I was in that damp tunnel. The next I was somewhere else. Ethan's gray world. The sky was a slab of slate pressing down, the air so heavy it stuck in my throat. No sound, not even my own footsteps, just a silence that swallowed everything. And there he was, a few feet away, Ethan standing still, staring at me with those wide, desperate eyes. His clothes hung off him, faded, like he'd been there too long. "Ethan," I whispered, my voice flat in that dead air. He opened his mouth, but before he could speak, the shadows surged. They came from everywhere, pouring out of the ground, the air, the edges of my vision, black and jagged, rushing toward him. He screamed, a sound that cut through the silence like a blade, raw and terrified. I lunged, reaching for him, but the shadows swallowed him whole, dragging him down into nothing. I hit the ground, hands clawing at empty dirt, yelling his name until my throat burned. Then, nothing. Blackness. I woke up in my bed in Boise, sunlight slicing through the blinds. My head pounded, my clothes stank of damp earth, and my hands were scratched raw. I didn't remember driving back, didn't remember anything after that scream. But there, crumpled in my fist, was a piece of paper I'd never seen. I smoothed it out, my gut sinking. In Ethan's messy scrawl, it said, "Don't stop looking." There's another door. I sat there, staring at it, the words sinking in. Another door. He was still out there, trapped, fighting. The room felt too quiet, the daylight too thin. I didn't know where to start, but I knew I couldn't stop. Not now, not after seeing him, hearing him. Whatever those shadows were, they had him. And I was going to find him, no matter what it took. That piece of paper changed everything. Don't stop looking. There's another door. Ethan's handwriting, shaky but real, stared up at me from my Boise bedroom floor. My head was still spinning from whatever happened in that tunnel. His scream, those shadows, the way they yanked him away. I could still feel the damp earth under my nails, smell it on my clothes, even though I was back in my bed. The morning light too bright, too normal. It didn't add up. How would I get home? What was that place? But the note, it was proof. He was alive, or something close to it, and he needed me. I stumbled to my laptop, the screen still dark from the night before. My hands shook as I powered it up, half expecting that warped video feed to flicker back on. Nothing, just my desktop, too quiet, too clean. I pulled up the forum, that Messages from Beyond thread, and scrolled like a man possessed. Fading Echo's last message, "They know you're here. Don't let them in," sat there, time-stamped just hours ago. No new posts, no sign of him. I typed a reply, fingers clumsy. "Ethan, I saw you. Where's the other door?" I hit send, but it felt like shouting into a well. Nothing came back. The day dragged on, and I couldn't sit still. Every creak in the house, every buzz of my phone, made me jump. I kept seeing him, those wide eyes, that scream, replaying it until my chest ached. I had to go back to Eagle, to that cabin. But the thought of facing those shadows again turned my stomach. Still, I couldn't leave him there. Late afternoon, I grabbed a flashlight, a crowbar from the garage, and drove out, the Boise skyline fading behind me. The woods around Eagle were thicker this time, the trees leaning in like they were watching. The cabin looked worse in daylight, rotted planks sagging, the air heavy with mildew. Inside, the trapdoor was still there, gaping like a mouth. I pried it open again, the hinges screeching, and shone my light down. The tunnel looked the same, dark, damp, endless, but it felt different, alive somehow. I climbed down, the ladder creaking under me, my breath fogging in the cold. The iron door was still at the end, those weird carvings glinting in the flashlight's beam. I hesitated, Ethan's warning ringing in my head. Don't let them in. But I'd already let myself in once, hadn't I? I gripped the crowbar and pushed. The gray world hit me again, same as before. Sky like a slab of stone, air thick and silent. No shadows this time, just emptiness stretching out, a dead mirror of Boise's outskirts. I called his name, Ethan. My voice flat, swallowed by the quiet. Nothing moved. I walked, boots sinking into soft gray dirt, the cabin's warped twin fading behind me. It was like wading through a dream, every step heavier, the silence pressing harder. Then I saw it, a shape ahead, low and dark, like a house but wrong, its edges bending too far. I got closer, and it was our old place, the one we grew up in on Boise's north end. But it wasn't right. Windows stretched thin, the roof sagging like it was melting. The front door hung open, black inside. I stepped up, crowbar tight in my hand, and called again. "Ethan, you here?" A sound came back, not his voice, but a low hum, buzzing in my bones. I crossed the threshold, and the air shifted, colder, sharper. The living room was there, sort of. Furniture twisted, the couch half sunk into the floor, pictures on the walls smeared into nothing. Something moved upstairs, a shuffle, soft but real. My heart kicked up, and I climbed the stairs, each step groaning like it might snap. The hall was long, too long, doors lining it where there shouldn't have been so many. I pushed one open, our old room, Ethan's and mine, but the bunk beds were warped, the posters peeling into gray mush. That hum got louder, vibrating through the walls. I turned, and there he was, Ethan, at the end of the hall, staring at me. He looked worse, thinner, paler, his eyes huge and glassy. "You came," he said, voice faint like it was coming from underwater. I started toward him, relief flooding me, but he held up a hand. "Stop. They're close." I froze. "Who?" "The shadows." He nodded, slow, his gaze flicking past me. "They don't like you here. You're too loud." I gripped the crowbar tighter. "I'm getting you out." "Where's the door?" He pointed down the hall, past him, to a door I hadn't seen, wooden, cracked, glowing faintly around the edges. I took a step, but the hum spiked, sharp and angry. The walls rippled, shadows bleeding out, slow at first, then faster, black tendrils snaking toward us. Ethan's face twisted. "Run!" he yelled, and I bolted, shoving past him toward that glowing door. The shadows lunged, cold, brushing my legs, and I heard him scream again, short, cut off. I hit the door, slamming it open, and tumbled through. I landed hard back in the tunnel, the iron door clanging shut behind me. My flashlight was gone, but my phone buzzed in my pocket. I yanked it out, hands shaking, and saw a new message from fading echo. "You're close. Keep going." The tunnel was quiet, but I could feel them, those shadows, watching from the other side. I wasn't done. Ethan was still in there, and I had to find that next door, no matter what. I sat there in that damp tunnel, the iron door looming behind me, my phone's screen glowing with Ethan's words. My hands were raw, my chest tight, but that message, it was a lifeline. He was alive or close enough, and he knew I was coming. The shadows had grabbed him again, cut his scream short, but he'd pointed me to that glowing door before they did. I'd made it through once, barely, and now I had to figure out what keep going meant. The tunnel was dead quiet, but it didn't feel empty. Something lingered, watching, waiting for me to slip. I climbed back up the ladder, legs shaky, and hauled myself into the cabin. The Boise woods outside Eagle were dark now, the night pressing against the cracked windows. My crowbar was still in my hand, knuckles white around it, and I stumbled to my car, the engine coughing to life. I drove back to Boise, the road blurring past, my mind stuck on that warped house, our old place, twisted into something wrong. Ethan had been there, real as anything, telling me to run. The door he'd pointed to, it had to be the next step. Back in my room, I dumped my gear and fired up the laptop again. The forum was still open. That, messages from beyond thread, staring back at me. I scrolled through Ethan's old posts as fading echo, hunting for clues. He described his world so many times, gray skies, empty streets, a silence that crushed you. But there was something else, a throwaway line I'd skimmed before. It's like being stuck in the places we used to know, but they're not ours anymore. Places we knew. The cabin was one, the house another. What else? I thought about Boise, the spots we'd haunted as kids. There was this old park we'd hit up, Overland Park out near the West End. Nothing fancy, just swings and a rusted slide, but we'd spent hours there, daring each other to climb the trees or sneak out after dark. Ethan loved it, called it our kingdom. If his world was a twisted echo of ours, maybe that was next. I grabbed a jacket, the crowbar, and a fresh flashlight and headed out. The streets were quiet, the city asleep, but I felt eyes on me the whole way. Overland Park looked different at night, shadows pooling under the trees, the swings swaying faintly in the wind. I walked the path we used to take, flashlight cutting through the dark, my breath fogging in the chill. It felt off, too still, like the air was holding its breath. Then I saw it, a hatch, half buried near the old oak we'd climbed 100 times. It wasn't there before, I'd swear it, but now it gaped open, metal rusted and cold. Another door. I pried it up, the hinges screaming, and shone the light down. Stairs this time, concrete and crumbling, dropping into blackness. My gut twisted, but Ethan's note burned in my pocket. Keep going. I started down, the steps slick under my boots, the air growing heavy, damp. At the bottom, a tunnel stretched out, narrower than the last, walls rough and wet. I moved fast, flashlight bouncing until I hit it. A wooden door, cracked and old, glowing faintly around the edges, just like the one in that warped house. I pushed it open and the gray world swallowed me again. This time it was the park. Overland, but not. The swings hung crooked, chains tangled, the slide bent into a snarl. The sky was that same dead slate, the silence choking. I called out, "Ethan," my voice dying flat. A rustle came back, faint from the trees. I moved toward it, crowbar up, heart pounding. The oaks were there, but twisted, branches clawing at the air like hands. And under one, there he was, Ethan, slumped against the trunk, pale as death. "Ethan," I said, rushing over. He looked up, eyes glassy, but he managed a weak nod. "You found it," he rasped, voice thin. I grabbed his arm, pulling him up. "Come on, we're getting out." But he shook his head, slow, pained. "Not yet. They're still here." I followed his gaze, and the shadows were back, sliding out of the trees, black and sharp, closing in slow. The air hummed, low and mean, vibrating in my chest. "We're going," I said, dragging him toward that glowing door. He stumbled, leaning on me, and the shadows picked up speed, tendrils snaking across the gray dirt. I could hear them now, a whisper, not words, just noise, hungry and close. We hit the door, and I shoved it open, hauling Ethan through. The shadows lunged, brushing my back, cold as ice, but we fell through, landing hard. I blinked, and we were in the park, the real one. Night still hung over Boise, the swings creaking softly, the air crisp and alive. Ethan was next to me, breathing shallow, his face gaunt but real. "You did it," he whispered, gripping my arm. I wanted to laugh, to cry, but something stopped me. The hatch was still there, open, and a faint hum leaked out, low, angry, waiting. Ethan's eyes met mine, wide again. "There's more," he said, voice breaking. "They're not done." I looked back at that hole, the dark staring up, and knew he was right. We'd made it out, but the shadows weren't finished with us. Not yet. We were sprawled on the grass in Overland Park, the real one, the Boise night wrapping around us like a damp blanket. Ethan's hand gripped my arm, his breaths ragged, his face too thin, too pale, like he'd been hollowed out. The swings creaked behind us, a soft whine in the wind, and for a second I thought we'd made it. He was here, solid, not some ghost on a screen. But that hatch, rusted, open a few yards away, kept humming, low and mean, like a growl you feel in your bones. Ethan's eyes, wide and glassy, locked on it. "There's more," he said again, voice cracking. "They're not done." I pulled him up, my leg shaky but stubborn. "We're done with them," I said, half believing it. "Let's get out of here." He stumbled as we moved, leaning hard on me, his weight real but frail. The park felt alive now, crickets chirping, a breeze rustling the trees, but that hum cut through it all, tugging at me. I glanced back at the hatch, its black mouth staring, and something moved inside, slow, dark, like oil shifting. My gut sank. We weren't free yet. I got him to the car, the engine sputtering as I floored it back to my place. Boise's streets blurred past, streetlights flickering like they were nervous. Ethan sat quiet, staring out the window, his fingers twitching. "They don't let go," he muttered, barely loud enough to hear. "What?" I asked, gripping the wheel. He turned, eyes hollow. "The shadows. They keep you. Even when you're out, they're still there." I didn't answer, just drove faster, the hum fading but not gone, stuck in my head like a bad song. Back home, I locked the door, double-checked it, and sat Ethan on the couch. He looked small, swallowed by the cushions, nothing like the brother who'd wrestled me over video games. I grabbed water, shoved it into his hands. "Drink. Talk. What happened?" He took a sip, slow, like he'd forgotten how. "I don't know," he said, voice rough. "One day I'm getting coffee, the next I'm there. Gray, empty, alone. Then the shadows came. They watch, they wait. I found that forum, figured out how to reach you. But they didn't like it." I paced, the floor creaking under me. "And the doors? You kept saying doors." He nodded, staring at the glass. "They're how you get out, or in. I don't know who made them, but they're everywhere in that place, tied to us, to where we've been. The cabin, the house, the park. They pulled me back every time I got close." His voice broke. "I thought you'd find me. You did, but they're mad now." The room went quiet, too quiet. I stopped pacing, listening. That hum, it was back, faint, seeping through the walls. Ethan's head snapped up, eyes wide. "You hear it?" I nodded, cold creeping up my spine. It wasn't just in my head anymore. The lights flickered once, twice, then held. Something scratched outside. soft, deliberate, like nails on wood. I grabbed the crowbar from the table, my pulse kicking up. "Stay here," I said, heading for the door. I cracked it open, the night spilling in. The street was empty, cars parked, lamps glowing, but the air felt wrong, thick, charged. The scratching stopped, but that hum grew, buzzing in my teeth. I stepped onto the porch, crowbar raised, and saw it, a shadow, tall and jagged, sliding across the yard. Not a trick of the light, not a tree. This thing moved, deliberate, toward the house. I slammed the door, locked it, and backed up. "Ethan, they're here." He was already up, shaky but standing. "We can't stay," he said, grabbing my arm. "They'll come through." The hums spiked, loud now, rattling the windows. The lights flickered again, and the shadows moved, inside. They bled from the corners, slow at first, then faster, tendrils curling across the floor. I swung the crowbar, hitting nothing but air, the metal clanging uselessly. Ethan pulled me toward the hall. "The basement. There's a way." We ran, the shadows chasing, cold brushing my heels. The basement door flew open, and we stumbled down, the hum deafening now. At the bottom, Ethan pointed, a crack in the wall, glowing faintly, just like the doors before. "There!" he yelled. The shadows surged, filling the stairs, and I shoved him toward it. "Go!" He hesitated, eyes locked on mine, then nodded and dove through. I followed, the cold snapping at me as I fell. I hit dirt, the gray world back around me. Sky heavy, silence crushing. Ethan was there, a few feet away, breathing hard. "We're not out," he said, voice trembling. The shadows were everywhere now, circling, taller, sharper, their hum a roar. I grabbed his hand, pulling him up. "Then we keep running." We bolted, the ground soft under us, the doors, those glowing cracks, dotting the distance. One glowed brighter, closer, and we aimed for it, the shadows closing in. We hit it together, tumbling through, and landed hard. My backyard, Boise, dawn breaking pink over the trees. The hum stopped, the air light again. Ethan collapsed beside me, gasping, alive. I looked back. No hatch, no crack, just grass. But his hand tightened on mine, and I saw it, a scrap of paper crumpled in his fist. He unfolded it, and my blood ran cold. In his scrawl, "They'll find another door." We sat there, the morning too quiet, the world too still. Ethan was back, but the shadows weren't gone. They were waiting, patient, endless. I'd found him, pulled him out, but this wasn't over. Not yet. Story 2. I got a voicemail from my wife. She died 10 years ago. Tonight, we're going to continue to open something that will stay with you. A voice from a tomb you thought was sealed, reaching out when you least expect it. Imagine losing the only person who made this world make sense, only to hear them again, years later, as if they had never left. That's where we're going. So turn off the lights, lock the doors, and step into the cold together. 10 years back, my wife Sarah was taken from me. It was a nasty November night in Salem, Oregon, rain pounding down, turning the roads into slick traps. She was driving home late, headlights cutting through the dark, when some coward in another car smashed into her. Her sedan spun off the highway, wrapped around a pine like a crumpled toy. The driver vanished. No trace, no justice. I buried her in the wet earth, the Willamette Valley stretching out cold around us, and after that, I was nothing, just a ghost rattling around our empty house. That first voicemail hit me out of nowhere. I was in the kitchen picking at a sandwich I didn't want, the TV droning some news I didn't care about. My phone buzzed, screen glowing on the counter with a number I hadn't seen in a decade, Sarah's old line. I figured it was junk. Spam calls are my nightly curse. But it wasn't. It was a voicemail, her voice slicing through the quiet. "Hi, it's me," she said, clear as yesterday. "I know this sounds wild, but listen. You can't trust him." The sandwich hit the floor, my hands shaking as I replayed it. It was Sarah, her soft pause, that little catch in her breath. I listened again, then again, trying to call it a fake. Maybe some jerk had snagged old clips I'd posted online, back when grief made me sloppy. But no one could mimic that life in her words, the way she'd breathe out a thought. It was her, impossible as it sounded, 10 years gone. The timestamp said it had come a minute ago, fresh, not a glitch. I called back, heart hammering, but it rang into nothing, no tone, just a black hole of silence. I sat there half the night, her warning looping in my head. You can't trust him. Who? What was she talking about? The Salem rain tapped the windows, steady, like it was keeping time. Work the next day was a blur. Every phone buzz made me flinch. Every voice sounded like hers for a heartbeat. By noon, I couldn't take it. I drove home, the river glinting dark beside me, needing to hear it again, to catch something I'd missed. But when I checked, the voicemail was gone. Not deleted, just erased. No trace in the log. Doubt crept in. Was I cracking? 10 years of quiet finally breaking me. Then the second one came. I was in the living room, still rattled, when my phone buzzed again. "He needs to get out of the house," Sarah said, voice tight. "He's watching." I stopped cold, eyes scanning the room. Sunlight spilled through the windows, dust drifting slow, but the air felt heavy, wrong. Something prickled my neck, eyes unseen, boring into me. I snatched my keys and ran, the door banging shut as I peeled out, tires chewing gravel. I drove through Salem for hours, her words stuck on repeat. He's watching. Who? What was in there? Night fell, thick and wet, the valley swallowing the last light. When I got back, the house felt different, charged, like a storm was trapped inside. I stepped in, and there it was, a picture frame on the mantel, one I hadn't seen in years. It was Sarah's favorite, us in Astoria, laughing by the ocean. I'd smashed it long ago, grief and rage in my fists, the glass swept away. Now it sat there, perfect, untouched. My hands shook as I grabbed it, and a note slipped out, her handwriting sharp and real. "He's in the basement," it said. My blood froze. I took a knife from the kitchen, the blade glinting, and crept to the basement door. It creaked open, a black pit below. The air was cold, damp, the bulb flickering when I hit the switch. Shadows stretched too long across the concrete. I moved slow, knife up, every step loud. Old boxes, mildew stink, then the corner. The shadows didn't fit, too dark, too sharp, bending wrong. I got closer, the air humming, alive. A whisper started, low, curling around me. There, in the corner, a mirror, one that didn't belong. My face should have been there, but it was Sarah, pale, scared, her lips moving silent. The glass rippled like she was pushing through, the whispers growing loud, meaningless. I backed up, slammed the door, my pulse roaring. The phone buzzed again, another voicemail. "It's too late," she said, voice breaking. "He's already inside." I stood there, the basement door slammed shut, the knife trembling in my hand. That mirror, Sarah's face trapped pushing against the glass, burned behind my eyes. The whispers had stopped, but the silence was worse, thick and heavy, like the house was waiting. My phone sat on the counter, its last message, He's already inside, hanging in the air. I couldn't think straight, couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me, boring through the walls. Who was he? What did she mean? The lights flickered just once, and I jumped, the knife clattering to the floor. I grabbed it, heart pounding, and checked the locks, front door, back door, windows, all tight. Salem's rain drummed outside, steady, but it didn't calm me. I paced the living room, the picture frame still on the mantel, mocking me with its impossible perfection. That note, he's in the basement, felt like a dare. I couldn't go back down there, not yet, but I couldn't stay still either. The air buzzed, faint at first, then louder, a hum I felt in my teeth. I grabbed my phone, half expecting another voicemail, but the screen stayed dark. The hum grew, rattling the windows, and the lights flickered again, longer this time. Something scratched outside, slow, deliberate, like nails dragging across wood. I crept to the window, peeling back the curtain. The street was empty, rain slicked, glowing under the street lamp, but the shadows moved wrong, stretching too far, too fast. I dropped the curtain, backing up, and the scratching stopped. The hum didn't. I turned, and the basement door was open. Not wide, just a crack, enough to show the dark below. I'd locked it, I knew I had. My breath hitched, the knife slick in my palm. "Sarah," I whispered, stupid, desperate. No answer, just that hum pulling me closer. I stepped toward it, every instinct screaming to run, but her voice, her warnings, kept me tethered. The stairs creaked under me as I went down, the bulb flickering wild now, shadows dancing like they were alive. The mirror was still there, in the corner, but it was different, bigger. The frame rusted, the glass fogged. Sarah's face flickered in it, faint, her eyes wide, pleading. The hum spiked, loud and sharp, and the whispers came back, low, overlapping, a mess of sound I couldn't catch. I reached out, fingers brushing the glass, and it rippled, cold under my touch. Her lips moved. "Get out." Clear as anything. No sound, just the shape of the words. The glass warped, her hand pressing through, pale and thin, reaching for me. I yanked back, stumbling, and the hum turned into a growl, deep, angry, shaking the walls. The shadows in the corner stretched, peeling off the concrete, tall and jagged, moving toward me. I swung the knife, hitting nothing, the blade whistling through air. They kept coming, slow, deliberate, their edges sharp as broken glass. I bolted up the stairs, slamming the door, shoving a chair under the knob. The growl followed, low and steady, seeping through the floor. The house went dark, lights out, power gone. Rain lashed the windows, the only sound left, but I felt it, something heavy, close. I fumbled for my phone, the screen lighting up my shaking hands. No signal, but a new voicemail waited. I hit play, Sarah's voice trembling. "He's not me," she said, fast, panicked. "Don't listen to him." The message cut off, static crackling, and the chair scraped once, hard, against the basement door. I froze, staring at it. The hum was back, softer now, but closer, like it was in the room. A knock came, 3 slow taps from the front door. My heart stopped. I crept over, knife up, and peeked through the peephole. Nothing, just the porch, the rain, the dark. Another knock, louder, and the hum spiked again. I backed away, and the basement door rattled, the chair sliding an inch. "Sarah," I called, voice breaking. No answer, just the knocks, the hum, the rattle, all at once, closing in. The lights flickered back on, weak, buzzing. The front door creaked open, unlocked, impossible, and a shadow stretched across the floor, long and thin, not mine. I spun, and the basement door was wide now. The chair toppled. Footsteps, slow, heavy, came up the stairs. My phone buzzed, another voicemail, but I couldn't move, couldn't look away. The steps stopped, and a voice, not Sarah's, not quite, called my name low and wrong from the dark below. I ran, out the front door, into the rain, the knife slipping from my hand. Salem's streets blurred past, wet and cold, my breath burning. I didn't stop until I hit the river, the Willamette's black water rushing beside me. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, but I didn't check it, not yet. That voice, that thing, it wasn't her, but it knew me, and it was still in my house, waiting. I could feel it, even out here, watching from the shadows I'd left behind. I stood by the Willamette River, the black water churning under Salem's night sky, rain soaking me through. My phone buzzed in my pocket, that last voicemail waiting, but my hands wouldn't move. Too cold, too scared. That voice from the basement, not Sarah's, not quite, still echoed in my head, calling my name like it owned me. I'd left the knife behind, the house wide open, and I could feel it out there, waiting, patient as death. The hum was gone, but the air stayed heavy, pressing down like it knew something I didn't. I fished out my phone, the screen glowing wet in my palm. One new message. I hit play, Sarah's voice shaking through the static. "He's not what you think," she said, fast, desperate. "Don't go back." The call cut off, a sharp click, and the river's rush filled the silence. Don't go back? Where else was I supposed to go? That house, our house, was all I had left of her, and now it was his, whatever he was. My breath fogged in the cold, and I started walking, away from the water, back toward town, my boots slapping wet pavement. The streets were empty, Salem asleep under the rain. But I wasn't alone. Shadows moved, too long, too sharp, stretching across the road, keeping pace. I sped up, heart hammering, glancing back. Nothing, just street lamps and wet asphalt. But the feeling stuck, eyes on my back, steady and close. My phone buzzed again, and I nearly dropped it. Another voicemail. I played it, rain dripping down my face. "He's using me," Sarah said, voice breaking. "Stay away." Static swallowed the end, and a sound came, not from the phone, but behind me, a low laugh, soft and wrong. I spun, and there he was, across the street, under a lamp, a figure too tall, too thin. Not Sarah, not anyone, just a shape, dark and jagged, watching me. My legs locked, the rain blurring him, but those eyes, pale, glowing, cut through. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, and the hum started again, low in my chest. I bolted, running blind through Salem's alleys, the laugh trailing me, fading, then snapping back, closer each time. I ended up at the edge of town, an old gas station, its sign flickering. The clerk barely looked up as I stumbled in, dripping, wild-eyed. "You okay?" he mumbled. I nodded, lying, and sank into a corner, phone clutched tight. It buzzed again. Another message. I didn't want to hear it, but I had to. Sarah's voice, fainter now. "He's here. He knows you." The line crackled, and that laugh slipped through. His laugh, right in my ear. I dropped the phone, the screen cracking on the tile. The lights flickered, the clock swearing under his breath. I grabbed my phone, the crack spiderwebbing across Sarah's last words, and ran again, out into the rain, back toward the house. I couldn't stay away, couldn't let him have it, have her. The streets blurred, my lungs burning until I hit my block. The house loomed, dark, the front door still open, swinging slow in the wind. That hum was everywhere now, loud, shaking the ground. I stepped inside, the air cold and thick. The living room was wrong, furniture shifted, the picture frame gone. Footsteps, his, echoed from the basement, steady, coming up. I grabbed a lamp, the cord yanking free, and stood my ground. The shadows moved first, spilling out, tall and sharp, then him. Too tall, too thin, his face a blur except those pale eyes. "You shouldn't have come," he said, voice like hers, but twisted, mocking. I swung the lamp, cracking it across him, but it passed through. Nothing solid, just cold air and that laugh. He lunged, shadows surging, and I fell back, hitting the wall. My phone buzzed one last time, Sarah's voice breaking through. "Run!" Before it died, battery gone. The room shook, the hum deafening, and he reached for me, fingers long and black. I scrambled up, out the door, into the rain again, his laugh chasing me. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing in some alley, the house lost behind me. Dawn broke, gray and wet, the rain slowing. I sat there, soaked, empty. House gone, Sarah gone, him still out there. My phone was dead, but her last words stuck. "Stay away." I didn't. I couldn't. Whatever he was, he'd taken her voice, her memory, and now he had me in his sights. The hum was faint now, distant, but it wasn't over. He'd find me again, and next time, I wouldn't have anywhere left to run. Story 3. Everyone says I had a baby. I started to go along with it. We're going to dive into something that will blow your mind. Imagine everyone you know swears that you have a part of your life that you can't find. Something alive, something that's yours, and you have no memory of it. That's where we're headed. So settle in, keep the lights low, and let's step into this fog together. 6 months ago, my life started unraveling in a way I can't explain. I'm Clara, living in a sleepy corner of Mobile, Alabama. Humid air, old oaks dripping moss, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and your business. It kicked off with my neighbor, Mrs. Tate, a sweet old lady with a knack for knitting. She showed up at my door one morning, holding a pair of baby shoes. Pink, glittery toes, little sequin flowers on the sides. "For your little one," she said, smiling like it was the most normal thing. I blinked, took them, and mumbled a thanks, figuring she'd mixed me up with someone else. I'm not special looking. Short, dark hair, hazel eyes. Maybe some new mom down the street was the real target. I shut the door, tossed the shoes in my bedroom closet, and forgot about it. But it didn't stop. Next day, my mailman, Jim, grinned at me over the fence. "How's the baby doing?" he asked, casual as anything. I froze, clutching a stack of bills. Fine," I said, too polite to correct him. "I'm Southern. It's baked in me." He nodded like that settled it, and walked off. I stood there, the mobile heat sticking to my skin, wondering who they thought I was. I've never been pregnant, never had a kid. I live alone, always have. It kept coming. People I barely knew. Grocery clerks, the lady at the coffee shop, started asking about my little girl. They'd smile, offer tips, hand me stuff, baby clothes, a rattle, a pack of diapers one guy slipped into my cart at the store. I'd nod, say, "Oh, okay," and shove it all in the closet with those glittery shoes. It was weird, sure, but Mobile's small. Maybe a rumor got loose, some mix-up I could laugh off later. I didn't push back, didn't want to seem rude. That's my flaw. I let things slide. Then it got stranger. I was at the market picking up bread when the manager, Mr. Ellis, an older guy with a permanent grin, sidled up. "How's that sweet girl liking the new formula?" he asked, like we talked about it before. I forced a smile, said, "She's good," and moved on. When I got home, I unpacked my bags, bread, milk, and a can of baby formula I didn't buy. My kitchen cabinet had another one, half empty, sitting there like it belonged. I stared at it, my pulse ticking up. I hadn't put it there. I'd have remembered. The questions kept piling. Neighbors at the mailbox, the barista at my usual spot, all asking about her, all acting like I'd been a mom for months. "How's the little darling today?" they'd say, and I'd answer, "Oh, she's wonderful." My voice thin, automatic. It was easier to play along than to argue, to watch their faces twist if I said, "I don't have a kid." They were so nice, too nice. And the stuff kept coming. A crib from a church lady, a swing that plugs in and jiggles, toys stacking up in my closet. I'd thank them, shut the door, and wonder what the hell was happening. One morning, I met Jenny at the coffee shop. She's got a kid, 9 months old, always chattering about him. "Play date soon?" she asked, grinning. "Our little ones would love it." I shrugged, said, "Maybe," and sipped my coffee. Next time I saw her, she beamed, pulling out her phone. "They had so much fun last time," she said, showing me a picture, her chubby boy in red, sitting on a blanket. "Your girl's blue eyes are just precious in that dress." I looked, only one kid in the shot, dark eyes, no dress, no blue anything. My stomach twisted, but I nodded. "Yeah, she's cute," I said, voice hollow. I went home, opened that closet, stuffed with baby junk now, and dug through it. There it was, a light blue dress, folded neat, one I didn't remember taking. My hands shook as I held it, the fabric soft, real. I dropped it, backed away, the room too quiet. That night I called my mom. We don't talk much, she's out in Montgomery. "Hey, it's me," I said, casual. "Clara, hi," she answered, then paused. "How are you two holding up?" "Two?" I asked, throat tight. "You and my grandbaby," she said, sharp. "Give Lily my love." She hung up before I could argue. Lily. I'd always loved that name. Read it in a book as a kid. Thought it'd be perfect for a daughter someday. I sat there, phone dead in my hand, the house creaking around me. The closet door hung open, the blue dress peeking out, and something shifted. A faint noise like a sigh from my room. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just listened as Mobile's night pressed in, heavy and still. That night after Mom's call, I couldn't sleep. Lily, her name, my name for a kid I never had, stuck in my throat. I sat on the couch, the house too still, the blue dress glaring from the closet across the room. That sigh I'd heard, it wasn't the wind, wasn't the old boards settling. It came again, soft, from down the hall, my bedroom door cracked open just enough to show the dark. I grabbed a flashlight, my hands sweaty, and crept toward it, the beam shaking across the floor. The room was empty, bed made, curtains still, but the crib was there, set up by the window, neat as anything. I hadn't done that. I'd left it in pieces, shoved in the closet with the swing and the toys. Next to it, a changing table stood, assembled, a teddy bear perched on top. My breath caught. I'd never opened that box, never touched it. I stepped closer, the floor creaking, and saw a bruise on my shin, purple and fresh, right where I'd have bumped the table's leg. I hadn't felt it happen, but there it was, real as the wood under my fingers. I backed out, shut the door, and locked it. Pointless, maybe, but it felt like something. The house stayed quiet, but the weight didn't lift. Morning came, gray and humid, Mobile's heat creeping in early. I went for coffee, needing air, needing normal. The barista, Ellie, grinned as I walked in. "Rough night?" she asked, pouring my usual. "Kid kept you up, huh?" I stared, my tongue stuck. "No," I said, sharp, the first time I'd pushed back. Her smile faltered, eyes narrowing, but she shrugged and handed me the cup. I sat down, hands shaking, the coffee bitter on my tongue. A woman I didn't know slid into the seat across from me, mid-30s, soft voice, concern dripping off her. "You okay, hun?" she asked, leaning in. "How's your daughter?" I gripped my cup, the heat biting my palms. "Fine," I muttered, dodging her eyes. She didn't let up, voice dropping low. "New moms get like this sometimes. Down, lost. It's normal." I snapped my head up. "I'm not a mom," I said, loud enough to turn heads. She blinked, then smiled, tight and wrong. "Sure, sweetie," she said, patting my hand and left. I walked home, the streets too quiet, the oaks looming like they were listening. My neighbor across the way, Mr. Hale, waved as I grabbed my mail. "How's Lily today?" he called, cheerful. I forced a grin. "Happy as ever," I said, the lie smooth now. He nodded. "Heard her screaming last night when I got in. Quite a storm. Surprised you got her down at all." I froze, mail slipping in my hands. "She settles quick," I said, voice thin and bolted inside. The house smelled different, sweet, faint like powder. I dropped the mail, bills, junk, a red envelope with no address, and opened the kitchen cabinet for a glass. A noise stopped me, soft, high from my room. Not a sigh this time, a whimper, clear as anything. I stood there, glass in hand, listening. It faded, then came back, louder, a cry. My stomach dropped. I set the glass down, slow, and moved toward the bedroom, the locked door now ajar. Inside, the crib was the same, the teddy bear staring blank. The cry came again, sharp, needy, from inside it. I stepped closer, breath shallow, and looked down. A stuffed elephant sat there, plush and gray, one I didn't recognize. The cry stopped. I picked it up, soft in my hands, and my head spun. Cute, perfect for Lily. Someone must have... Wait, what? I dropped it, backing up. The glass in my hand wasn't a glass anymore. It was a baby bottle, warm, half full. I stared, my cup still on the counter behind me, untouched. I threw the bottle down, the plastic clattering, and kicked the crib, hard again until the wood splintered. I shoved the changing table over, the crash loud in the quiet, and dragged it all to the closet. Crib pieces, elephant, dress, everything, slamming the door shut. "I'm done," I said, out loud to nothing. "No more." My voice echoed, weak, and the house answered, a creak, low from the walls. I sank onto the couch, head in my hands, the sweet smell stronger now, clinging to me. The mail sat there, that red envelope on top. I grabbed it, tore it open. A photo slid out, me at the park, holding a bundle in a blue dress, smiling. My hands shook. I'd never been there, never held that. A note was scrawled on the back. "Lily loves you." The cry came again, loud from the closet, and the door rattled just once, hard. I dropped the photo, the room spinning, and knew I couldn't keep this up. Not anymore. I sat there, the red envelope crumpled in my lap, that picture of me and Lily burning a hole in my head. The cry came again, sharp, insistent, from the closet where I'd shoved the crib, the dress, all of it. The door rattled harder, wood groaning, and I stood, legs shaky, the sweet powder smell thick in my throat. "Stop it," I said, loud, to the empty house. The cry cut off, sudden, but the air didn't clear. It got heavier, like something was holding its breath. I grabbed the photo, tore it in half, me on one side, that bundle on the other, and threw it down. My phone buzzed on the table, screen lighting up. A text from Jenny. "Lily, okay? Heard her from my place last night." My hands froze. She lived 2 streets over. Impossible. I didn't answer, just stared as the closet door creaked, inching open. The elephant poked out, gray and plush, sitting there like it had crawled free. I kicked it back in, slammed the door, and wedged a chair under the knob. "No more," I said again, voice cracking. The day dragged, mobile's humidity pressing through the walls. I went for coffee, needing out, my head a mess. Ellie, the barista, smirked as I walked in. "Lily, keeping you up?" she asked, pouring. I glared. "I don't have a kid," I snapped. Her eyes flickered. Surprise, then something else, sharp and knowing. "Right," she said, slow, handing me the cup. I sat, sipping, when a man rushed in, beelining for me. He bent close, whispering, "You left her in the car, back seat, in the car seat." My stomach dropped. I ran outside, unlocked my car, yanked the door open. Nothing. No seat, no kid, just empty leather. I drove home, hands tight on the wheel, the man's words looping. "You left her." I hadn't. I couldn't have, but my shin throbbed where I'd hit that table, and the bruise stared back when I checked. Inside, the house was wrong, mail scattered, the chair moved, the closet door wide. The crib was back by the window, whole again, the elephant inside staring. A cry, soft, real, came from it, and I stepped closer, dread pooling in my gut. Nothing there, just the toy, but the cry grew, filling the room, my head, until I clapped my hands over my ears. I grabbed my phone, scrolled to Jenny's photo, the one with her boy, the one she swore had Lily too. I stared, red shirt, dark eyes, one kid. Where was she seeing blue eyes, a dress? The cry stopped, and the sweet smell hit hard, dizzying. I called Mom, desperate for something solid. "Mom, it's Clara," I said, fast. "Hey, honey," she answered, warm. "How's Lily?" I swallowed. "There's no Lily," I said, firm. She laughed, soft. "Oh, Clara, don't be silly. I hear her, crying now. Check on her." The line went dead, and the cry started again, loud, right behind me. I turned, and the crib shook, the elephant gone. Footsteps, small, quick, pattered down the hall. I followed, phone slipping in my sweaty hand, the sound leading to the kitchen. The cabinet hung open, a baby bottle rolling out, stopping at my feet. I picked it up, warm, full, and dropped it, the plastic bouncing. The footsteps ran back toward my room, and I chased them, the cry now a wail. The crib was empty, but the blue dress lay inside, wrinkled like someone had worn it. I sank to the floor, the wail fading, my breath ragged. "Lily," I whispered, testing it, and the house answered. A sigh, soft, close. My phone buzzed, a voicemail. I played it, Jenny's voice. "She's so pretty in that dress, Clara. Don't forget her." Static, then a giggle, not Jenny's, high and wrong. I threw the phone, the screen cracking again, and stood, staring at the crib. The dress moved, slight like a breeze I didn't feel, and the cry came back, soft, pleading. I couldn't fight it. "Lily's fine," I said, loud to the air. The lie smooth now. The cry stopped, the room still. I picked up the dress, held it, the fabric warm, and something shifted. My shin didn't hurt, the bruise gone. The sweet smell wrapped me, and I smiled, small, shaky. "She's sleeping," I said, folding the dress, setting it in the crib. The house sighed again, content, and I sat there, the night pressing in, knowing she was here, somewhere always, whether I remembered her or not. Story 4. My friend walked into the water. I never saw him again. Imagine losing your best friend to something you can't hear, something that pulls them away while you're stuck watching helplessly. That's where we're headed, so sit back, turn off the lights, and wade into this together. Kids can be mean little critters, can't they? You grab a toy and suddenly someone's yanking your hair because it was theirs. Territorial, like they're staking out their spot in the world. Some folks say it's baked into us, figuring out who's who early, survival stuff. I don't know what a plastic tractor's got to do with that, but I get it. I grew up different, though, born deaf, wrapped in a quiet that draped me like a heavy coat. Invisible to most, but the other kids in Mobile, Alabama, sniffed it out quick. Made me an easy mark. My folks tried. They gave me tools, taught me to sign, to read lips, to face the world. It wasn't enough. Being deaf didn't shield me from the looks, disgust when I missed a dodgeball cue, pity when they cut me from band even though I could feel a guitar's hum in my fingertips. Teachers skipped subtitles for movie day, left me staring at silent screens. That was the real sting, not the words I couldn't hear, but the way they boxed me out. I got used to it, kept my head down, trudged through. Then I met Jamie. It was a cold morning in Mobile, puddles dotting the sidewalk, my sneakers soaking through as I dragged myself to school. He was under the bleachers by the football field, red hair, freckles, sitting alone like he didn't care who saw. Something about him hit me. Kindness, maybe, or just a hunch. I don't know why I walked over, why I signed. I'm Ella. He mouthed back, slow, Jamie, and that was it. We clicked, two oddballs against the tide. We'd wait out the other kids, let them finish their games, then sneak in when the coast was clear. Silent ninjas. We'd hit the hopscotch lines, shoot hoops, claim the quiet. Jamie picked up sign language fast, fingers flying, grinning when he nailed a phrase. For the first time, I had someone outside my family to talk to, someone who got it. But the jerks found out, too. High school rolled in, and the taunts got uglier, crueler than kid stuff, more deliberate. I'd catch their sneers, their mocking gestures, and Jamie would sign, "Close your eyes. That's your power." I'd laugh, shut them, and let the world fade. He was my rock, still is, in a way that hurts to think about. College came, and we picked up hiking. Mobile's got swamps and woods that pull you in if you know where to look. I love the smells, pine, damp earth, alive. Jamie chased the sounds, birds, wind, stuff I'd never catch. That morning's burned into me, waking in our tent, just outside Dauphin Island, the air thick with salt and pine. Sun barely up, gold slicing through the trees. I signed, "Get off your phone," 3 times before he looked up, smirking. "Fine. No gay guys on Tinder out here anyway," he signed back, tossing it aside. We wandered, no plan, just soaking it in. Squirrels darting up oaks, weird plants we'd stop to poke at. Those moments stretched, like time bent to let us breathe. I was checking out a rock, smooth, maybe granite, when Jamie froze, head tilted. He did that when he heard something. His world, not mine. I grinned, signed. "What birds got you this time?" He didn't answer, just stared, eyes glazing over like he was caught in a spell. I waved, nothing. Walked right up, signed, "Blackbird?" "Finch?" He shook his head, slow, and signed back, "Someone's playing a violin." My stomach flipped. Hearing stuff I couldn't was normal, but this was off. He started moving, fast, toward the sound, I guessed. I signed, "What is it?" He just kept going, hands flashing. Magnificent, stunning, magic. We hit a clearing, a A small lake glinting in the middle, a rock jutting out like a stage. On it, a man, naked, hunched, violin in hand, bow sliding slow. Something was wrong, too still, too perfect, like he'd been waiting there forever. That man on the rock, he was unreal. Long blonde hair spilling down a body that gleamed in the morning light, chiseled like he'd stepped out of a painting. Beautiful, sure, but his smile crooked it all, too sharp, too knowing. Jamie stopped dead, staring like the world had shrunk to just that sound, that figure. I signed, "Hey, come on," calm at first, backing up to stay in his sight. He didn't blink, didn't move, just watched, eyes locked on the man. The violin kept going, I figured, bow sliding slow, pulling him in. I stepped closer, signing harder. "Stop, let's go." Nothing. He started walking straight for the lake, legs stiff like a machine. My hands flew, frantic now. "Jamie, stop!" But he was gone, lost in whatever that music was doing. I grabbed his arm. He was stronger, always had been. But this wasn't normal strength. He didn't flinch, didn't slow, just kept going, dragging me with him. The water lapped at the shore, dark and still, and he stepped in, cold, soaking his boots. I yelled, soundless to me, but I felt it rip out. And he glanced back, eyes soft, content, like he was fine with this. The man on the rock straightened, tall and sudden, like he'd heard me think it. His smile widened, not beautiful anymore, something hungry breaking through. I signed at him, "Stop it!" Wild, useless, and he looked at me, dead-eyed. No change in that slow bow. Jamie waded deeper, water to his knees, then his waist, and I clung to his arm, pulling hard. He shook me off, gentle but firm, and kept going, the lake swallowing him step by step. I screamed, raw, throat burning, and the man licked his lips, a flicker of desperation in his face, like he'd been starving for this. I let go, falling back, tears hot on my cheeks. Jamie didn't stop, shoulders under, then his head, the water closing over him smooth, no ripples. It was too deep, too fast, impossible for that little lake. I dove in after him, kicking hard, eyes stinging in the murk. He was ahead, sinking, a shadow slipping down. I grabbed for him, fingers brushing his shirt, but he kept going, determined, like he wanted it. My lungs burned, head spinning, and I looked up, light fading, the surface too far. Down below, his face turned, those kind eyes, that gentle smile, like he was saying something I couldn't catch. I broke for air, gasping, and hauled myself to shore, dripping, shaking. The man was still there, on his rock, watching me with a confusion that turned smug. I screamed at him, primal, wordless, angry sounds tearing out. He didn't flinch, just stared, his skin shifting, bronze draining to a sick gray like boiled meat. His arms stretched, too long, unnatural, that smile growing into something nightmarish, teeth jagged, eyes sinking into black ovals. I couldn't see the change happen, but it did, slow and wrong, until he was a thing, not a man. I couldn't move, pinned by those eyes, huge, empty, swallowing me. Time stretched, the good moments I'd mused about before nowhere now. This was forever, unbearable. He raised a thin, sickly arm, waved slow, mocking, then crouched, sliding off the rock like a spider. The water took him, quiet, no splash, just gone. And Jamie with him. I sat there, wet grass under me, staring at the empty lake, the silence louder than ever. My best friend, my rock, gone, pulled under by something I couldn't fight, couldn't hear. The woods around Dauphin Island stayed still, the sun climbing like nothing had happened. I got up, legs weak, and stumbled back to the tent, Empty now, his phone on the ground, screen dark. The air smelled of pine again, sharp, but it didn't matter. Jamie was in that water, or somewhere worse, and I was alone, the quiet heavier than it had ever been. I stood by that lake dripping, the Dauphin Island woods too quiet around me. The man, or whatever he'd become, was gone, slipped under with Jamie, leaving the water flat, like nothing had happened. My hands shook, fists clenching wet grass, and I stared at the spot where he'd sunk, where I'd last seen those kind eyes, that smile. The air smelled sharp, pine cutting through the salt, but it didn't bring me back. Jamie was my anchor, the one who made the silence bearable, and now he was lost to something I couldn't touch. I stumbled back to our tent, legs heavy, the ground sucking at my boots. His phone lay there, screen cracked from when he'd tossed it, a lifeline he didn't need anymore. I picked it up, cold in my hand, and sank onto the sleeping bag, his side empty, the fabric still creased from him. The quiet hit harder than ever, my deaf world closing in. No Jamie to fill it with his quick signs, his laugh I'd feel in the air. I signed his name, slow, Jamie, to the nothing, like it'd bring him back. It didn't. The day crawled on, sun climbing over Mobile's edge, but I couldn't move. Just sat, staring at the trees, replaying it. That violin, the way it hooked him, the hunger in that thing's eyes. I'd tried, dived in, fought the water, but he'd wanted to go, or something made him. My lungs still ached, a reminder I'd failed. The lake stayed out there, a dark mirror in the clearing, and I knew I had to tell someone, get this off me, even if it sounded crazy. People need to know. Jamie didn't just vanish, he was taken. That thing's still in my head, lurking in the corners when I blink. Gray skin, black eyes that wave goodbye like a taunt. The forest around Dauphin Island calls me back, even now, tugging at me through the damp air. My chest's tight, scarred from that dive, but it's not the water I dream of. It's him, under it, and whatever pulled him down. I can't hear, never could, but I feel it. Something ancient, tied to that music I'll never know. It's out there on that rock, waiting with its fiddle, patient as the tide. Jamie's gone, and I'm left with this. His absence, the weight of it, and a pull I can't shake. The beauty's in the quiet, I guess. I don't have to dread every rustle, every note. I know where it'll be, hunched over that lake playing its trap. I packed the tent, slow, hands numb, and drove back to Mobile, the road blurring through wet eyes. The city hummed around me, cars, people, life, but it didn't reach me. Jamie's phone sat on the seat, a piece of him I couldn't leave. I stopped at the house, dropped my bag, and stood in the doorway, the silence louder than ever. The woods still whispered, faint, pulling at my sleeves, and I knew I'd go back. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. That night I dreamed of the lake, dark, endless, Jamie's shadow sinking slow. No sound, just the feel of it, heavy and cold. I woke gasping, the air thick with salt I shouldn't smell, and checked my phone. No messages, just habit. The pull stayed, a tug I couldn't cut loose, and I signed his name again, Jamie, to the dark. He's out there, or something is, and I'm tied to it now, whether I hear it or not. Story 5. Hot singles near you. Imagine a simple ad that turns into a noose, tightening with each click until it's right outside your door. That's where we're headed. So lock your screen, dim the lights, and let's see what's watching from the other side. I've never been one for those loud, blinking ads that pop up at 2 a.m. You know, the neon junk promising hot deals or hotter dates. I'd laugh, roll my eyes, and keep moving. That was my routine in my little place in Bangor, Maine. Rain tapping the windows, the kind of quiet that hums in your bones. But one night, something broke that rhythm. I was sprawled on the couch, lost in some Reddit rabbit hole, when an ad flashed up. Hot single ladies in your area. Same old trash. I snorted, scrolled past, didn't give it a second thought. A few minutes later, it was back. Or close enough. The text shifted. Hot singles only 2 miles away. I stopped, coffee halfway to my mouth. Ads track you. Location's their game. But seeing it spelled out so exact hit me funny. Bangor's small. 2 miles could be downtown or the woods. I shrugged. Marketing gimmick, nothing more, and kept reading. The rain picked up, drumming hard, and I refreshed the page. There it was again, bolder. Hot singles near you, 500 yards. My gut twisted. 500 yards isn't miles, it's my block, maybe closer. This time, a face came with it. A brunette staring out, eyes pale as frost, irises so faded they were almost white. No flirty grin, just a blank, steady gaze that cut through the screen. It wasn't some airbrushed stock shot. It felt personal, like she knew I was there, slouched in my dim living room. A chill ran through me, sharp, but I blamed the late hour, the cold seeping in. I clicked away, shook it off, tried to focus on something else, cat videos, anything. Another refresh, and it got worse. The ad swallowed the page, big and loud. I'm closer than you think, 100 yards away. My stomach dropped. 100 yards is my street, maybe my yard. I leaned to the window, tugged the curtain aside. The sidewalk glowed under a flickering street lamp, empty, just puddles and wet leaves. I let the curtain fall, told myself it was a glitch, some creepy ad trick gone too far. My hands were sweaty, though, and I couldn't sit still. The next one hit hard. Same woman, but her face was off, stretched long, grin too wide, teeth glinting like a snarl. The text read, "We see you, 50 yards." We, not just her now. Shadows behind her shifted, other figures with those same pale eyes, leaning in, pressing close. I tried to close the tab, frozen, the ad pulsing like it was alive. It updated. We're right here, 10 yards. 10 yards. That's my doorstep. My heart slammed, and I bolted to the window again, ripping the curtain wide. Nothing. Just the lamp's glow, rain streaking down. But the air felt thick, wrong, like something crouched out of sight. I turned back, and the ad had shifted. At your door, open up. A clatter hit, sharp, real, the doorknob jiggling, metal scraping. I spun, staring at the door, the sound loud in the quiet. My eyes flicked to the screen, a new image loaded. My house, snapped from the sidewalk, porch light on, the dead plant by the steps clear as day. She was there, near the door, taller, face half static, those pale eyes locked on me. The knob rattled again, harder, and I grabbed my phone. No signal. Wi-Fi blinking out. The ad changed one last time. My address, Bangor Street number and all, in red, bold letters. Below it, a photo. Me, sitting there, monitor glow on my face, taken from outside my window. I saw the shape behind the glass. Someone, something, holding a phone catching me right then. Hot singles, at your address, click now. The screen went black, lights flickered out, and I stood there, heart pounding, rain the only sound left. The knob rattled once more, then stopped. Dead silence. I stood there, frozen, the dead screen staring back, my reflection a ghost in the glass. The power was gone, lights, laptop, everything, leaving just the rain's steady hiss against the windows. That last ad burned in my head, my address, my face, snapped from right outside. The doorknob had stopped shaking, but the silence was worse, thick, alive, like it was holding its breath. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen, the beam jittery in my hand, and crept to the door, every creak under my feet too loud. I leaned close, ear to the wood, no sound, just cold seeping through. The peephole showed nothing. Porch empty, street lamp flickering, rain streaking down, but my chest stayed tight, like something was staring back I couldn't see. I backed off, flashlight sweeping the room, shadows jumping in the corners. My phone sat on the couch, useless. No bars, no Wi-Fi, just a cracked screen glowing faint when I tapped it. I needed to move, to check the windows, but my legs wouldn't budge. A thud hit, low, heavy, from the back of the house. My head snapped toward the hall, the beam cutting through dark to the kitchen door. Another thud, closer, deliberate, like steps on the porch out back. I gripped the flashlight, grabbed a knife from the counter, dull but better than nothing, and edged down the hall. The air got colder, wetter, like the rain had slipped inside. The back door loomed, glass panel dark, and I aimed the light. Nothing outside, just my own wide eyes bouncing back. The glass rattled, sharp, sudden, and I jumped, knife slipping in my sweaty grip. A shadow moved out there, tall, thin, too fast, gone when I blinked. My breath fogged, heart hammering, and I stepped closer, peering through. The yard was empty, grass slick, trees swaying, but that pale-eyed face flashed in my mind, her grin stretching too wide. The rattle came again, harder, and I saw it, a hand long and gray, smearing wet across the glass. Then gone. I stumbled back, the knife clattering to the floor, and the lights flickered, once, twice, then snapped on, weak and buzzing. The house hummed, alive again, but it didn't feel safe. My laptop whirred, screen lighting up, blank at first, then that ad reloaded. We're inside, click now. My stomach lurched, a new photo loaded. My living room, me standing there, flashlight in hand, taken from behind. I spun, nothing, just the couch, the shadows. But the air shifted, cold, brushing my neck. Footsteps, soft, wet, came from the hall. I grabbed the knife, flashlight shaking, and moved toward the sound. The kitchen was empty, but the back door hung open, rain pooling on the tile. I hadn't unlocked it, couldn't have. But there it was, swinging slow. A laugh hit, low, sharp, not mine, echoing from somewhere deeper in the house. I bolted to the front, knife up, and froze, the laptop updated, right behind you, with a shot of me now, back to the screen, hall stretching dark. I turned, slow, the laugh louder, her voice warped, joined by others, a chorus of whispers I couldn't place. Shadows moved, tall, jagged, sliding from the walls, pale eyes glinting in the dark. The knife felt useless, my hands numb, and I backed toward the door, fumbling the lock. They closed in, her face first, stretched and gray, then more, a crowd of them reaching. I yanked the door open, ran into the rain, cold, biting, Bangor streets swallowing me as I sprinted. I didn't stop, blocks blurred, lungs burning, until I hit a gas station, neon buzzing overhead. The clerk barely glanced up as I slumped inside, soaked, panting. My phone buzzed, alive now, signal back, and a text glowed. Missed you, try again. I deleted it, hands shaking, but the screen flickered. A photo loaded anyway. Me, right there, in the station, caught from across the room. I looked up. Nothing, just the clerk. The hum of coolers. But the laugh came again, faint from outside. I haven't gone home. The rain's still falling, Bangor's quiet too loud, and those eyes, those faces, stick with me, waiting in every shadow. I see that ad sometimes, popping up on my phone, my friend's laptop, always closer, always watching. They got in once, and they're not done. If you see it, hot singles near you, don't click, don't refresh, because once they know you, they're not selling anything. They're coming, and they don't stop until they're inside. And there you have it, brave souls, 5 stories that will stay with you long after the screen goes dark. The RV is still out there, parked in the dark, waiting to pull more stories from the void. I shudder at the thought of it, and I bet you do too. If these 5 terrifying horror stories of horror stories creep under your skin, hit that like button. Let me know you feel the chills. Share this with other nocturnal people. Spread the terror. Let's haunt more screens together. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that red button now. I'm aiming for 1,000 of you fearless souls to join me on this dark ride. We're so close, and I need you on this creepy crew to keep the nightmares going. Leave a comment. Which one stuck with you the most? The voicemail, the lake. I read them all. Stay, for the shadows still whisper. See you in the next part, if you dare.